What's checking, everybody? We are back. It's Chad. It's me, Jeff Ketchum, and it's time for the Orange Bloods Recruiting Hour. It's a Monday. It's 4 o'clock local. That's what we do. Do us a solid. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. Get notifications. And by all means, jump into the Specs chat. Let's make an event out of it. That's right. Have to stay up on the latest news. In fact, look, we are not hoarders of the information. We are not so exclusive that it's like only on Orange Bloods and only don't pull an Anwar and forget to the go live. I don't know what that even means.
Catch the other day on the morning show, they started the show, and I should say they started the show. Alex went on an incredible rant about Dominic Williams, and then Anwar realized he had not actually started the show.
No, that did not happen.
It's really, if you go back and watch the very beginning of a show, Alex is laughing when he realizes what happened. It's fantastic.
Well, I did not get that reference, Chris, but I'm glad that you made it because now I know, and now I will laugh at both of them the next time I'm communicating with them in any shape, form, or fashion. Believe me, that will not stay between us here on the show. No, but what I was saying is we're talking about news today, and it's not even orangebloodsarrivals.com generated. Big news coming from a competing network, but news is news. And when stuff happens with a 5-star prospect, you know, what are we going to do? Ignore news? So stay tuned. We'll get to that in just a second. I want to set this entire conversation up, Chad, with a conversation that I've been having in my head for the last couple of days, but really in the last 24 hours, I was even having it earlier this morning. And it centers around Texas football recruiting. And it centers around the fact that a year ago, if I had told you that Texas was going to win the Big 12 and play in the college football playoff, that on the back end of that we would see an incredible recruiting response. That's exactly what, you know, in theory, that's the thing that all programs are waiting for, to take their recruiting profiles to the next level. That, you know, if you're a coaching staff that's putting together top 10 classes, that's how to elevate it to top 5. If you're getting top 5 classes, that's how you compete for number 1 overall recruiting classes. And so when Texas won the Big 12 championship and was in the playoff in December, I was thinking to myself, holy crap, hold on tight. Recruiting is going to be bonkers in 2025, because now Texas can stop trying to convince kids in recruiting that they're going to be really good, and they're just really good. And like the impact of that should be significant in recruiting. And yet, here we are in May. It's early May. It's May 6th. We're beyond that Star Wars day in May, but you know, we're not too deep into May. And I was just thinking to myself, where's the recruiting momentum? When are we going to start to feel this impact from Texas having the success that it had a year ago? And I was thinking to myself, well, look, the official visits start in June. So we should be almost at this point that it was at around this time last year, then, you know, or the last couple of years, when you would go, okay, things look real good for a CJ Baxter, or things start to look, you start thinking about the success that Texas has had out of state. It really starts to happen in June. But really in May is when you start to sense that, okay, Texas is moving to the front with some guys, because we know that June is such a big recruiting month in terms of commitments and Texas momentum. And we're a month away from that, and yet it feels very quiet. It's what makes the conversation that we're about to have really ironic, but it's also a conversation that is a reminder of buckle up, that it's been pretty slow. I'm letting you know that I literally, all of you watching this show, that I've was driving around as of this morning thinking to myself, it's a little slow on the Texas football recruiting front. And specifically, I was thinking out of state. Chad, you and I can go through the in-state guys at the top of the list, and we've got a sense of what those recruitments look like, whether it's DeCorian Moore, or Michael Fasusi, or Jonah Williams, or on and on and on and on. We kind of know what those look like. But the out-of-state guys, if I were to say Texas is going to have a top 3 recruiting class, it's going to have to occur with the help of some out-of-state success. And by out-of-state success, big dogs, not a 4-star here or a 3-star there. No, you got to get the big dogs. That's been the thing that's carried Texas in the last couple of seasons. Brandon Baker a year ago, right? You start thinking about Ryan Wingo, guys that we've talked about, but Texas under Sarkisian has been able to generate success from out of state. Florida, California, Missouri, you name it, they've kind of dipped in there and had some success. I couldn't completely tell you as of this morning, like who are the big dogs? We thought maybe Jordan Davison would be a big dog. Mm-hmm. Not even looking at the Longhorns a month and a half ago, 2 months. You would have thought, well, it's Texas, Ohio State. Not any given day. It's one or the other. Texas isn't even really involved with him.
Yeah, we'll get there, Ryan. We're getting there.
I'm just setting the stage. So earlier today, within the last couple of hours, I saw a report from On3 where Jacksonville, Florida, Mandarin wide receiver Jamie French, and everybody will know him. He's not just a borderline. Like Rivals has him ranked 22nd in the country. He doesn't have a 5-star grade yet, but he'll eventually get there with that level of ranking. He's an industry 5-star guy. He named a top 3. And then the article teased that he had a favorite, a number 1 school. And I had a sneaking suspicion. I think I'm going to click on this, and it's going to tell me that Texas is the number 1 school for Jamie French, the wide receiver out of Florida. And sure enough, in reading this update from On3's Chad Simmons, Texas, LSU, Miami, those are the top 3. But Jamie French tells Chad Simmons, quote, really just the family feeling. They jumped on me quick and they stay on us. It feels like an open family there. Coach Chris Jackson, Coach Sark, they all play a big part. Coach Perry, the recruiting director, all of them. They've all played a part of it. So here we are. The first out-of-state megawatt super recruit of the 2025 recruiting class that is vocally announcing that Texas is the school to beat in his recruitment has arrived. He will take his official visit in June. He'll likely make a decision, I think, sometime this summer. But now I think it feels like the 2025 recruiting class is really today for me might be the unofficial here we go. And one of the things that Jamie French says in this update with Chad Simmons of On3 is, quote, if I'm feeling a school in June, I might want to announce then. Those OVs, the official visits, will be big. I want to not have any doubts about it, end quote. This time next month, the official visit scene is going to be bonkers. If we think about the first weekend in June, the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, all those weekends will be locked and loaded everywhere across the country. And Jamie French, at this moment, if you were going to make your very first big dog out-of-state projection for the Longhorns, it might very well be Jamie French. And what's interesting about that is he's a guy that's talked with DeCorian Moore about potentially playing together. It's one of the reasons why LSU is in the top 3. There's a lot of crossover with other commitments, schools, all of these things. But I'm fascinated to see where this goes clearly. And French is a guy that Texas was thought to be behind on. And he took that first visit earlier this spring to Texas, and it changed the dynamics of his recruitment. He came out of that visit saying, oh, yeah, Texas is definitely one of my top schools. but he hadn't completely outlined it in a way where he said, this is my favorite. These are the other couple of schools. And then there are these other schools. Texas was just in the bunch. But if you talk to people, I remember talking to a source, gosh, it was about a month ago. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. Like the timing of it all, I have to remember. But he mentioned we're in better shape with this kid than most people will give us credit for. And here we go. Today, he's acknowledging that Texas is his leader. He's mentioning the receivers that Sarkisian has developed both at Alabama and Texas. He mentions that his family loves Austin. His mom loves Austin. It's big news for the Longhorns that he so vocally was willing to confess this is the school that right now is at the top of my list.
And Catch, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a guy who was committed to Alabama at one point and decommitted like in January. So off of the Saban retirement, he's one of those guys.
Yes. And look, when you look at his visit list, it's a recruitment, and he visited back on April 6th. So a month ago today, he was in Austin.
I was going to ask you, wasn't he in on that visit weekend when DeCorian Moore was also in?
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo. He was. There's a lot of crossover on that weekend, and that was the weekend. And I mentioned it was about a month ago that I had a source mention we're in better shape with this kid than people around the nation really would acknowledge or believe. But man, this is a kid that gets around. He has visited since that visit to Texas. He's visited LSU. Matter of fact, he visited LSU last week. He's scheduled to visit Miami later in the year. He's visited Miami back in March. He's visited Florida State 6 times. He's visited Ohio State a couple of times, Florida a couple of times, Georgia 3 times, LSU 3 times, Miami 4 times, Pittsburgh a couple of times. He's got official visits set up to Tennessee and Texas and LSU. Again, he took his first official visit to LSU on May 1st. So just this past weekend, he was scheduled to visit LSU. That he's talking so much about Texas right now is a really big deal. And it's funny because if you look at the future cast and the projections from around the country on where people think he's going to go, the thought process was originally Alabama, but since then there was a lot of Ohio State buzz. There's been a lot of LSU buzz. There will, I think, now justifiably start to be a lot of Texas buzz.
Interesting. Almost 400 folks in the Specs chat. Some good stuff coming in. Catch, apparently we need to welcome in a new Sooner fan to the chat. Cole says he is a Sooner fan from Austin, not that annoying OU fan trying to troll. He also says that he likes the pod and other Sooners despise it. Cole, we are aware. Thank you very much for
You're not the only Sooner fan that likes us.
That's right. You're not the only one, but maybe you're the only one that'll say it out loud. I wanted to give that foundation, Catch, because I also wanted to mention this chat that Cole threw in. I want to know if you agree with it. Earlier, he jumped in by saying, y'all need some help. Your recruiting class is very mid right now, barely have anyone, and not even in the top 15. Would you agree with that assessment, or is that a little harsh?
I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, factually, he's not incorrect. The Longhorns are sitting at 6 commitments. It's, by design. A lot of this really comes down to the way Sarkisian prefers to recruit. And, I don't know that I would expect an Oklahoma Sooner fan to have a pulse for the way the plan under Steve Sarkisian's watch kind of unfolds. I mean, it's not his job to understand. I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you that I've got LSU and Alabama and Ohio State. I don't have their recruiting plans all memorized and completely understood. But at Texas, Sarkisian's not a huge fan of early commitments. They don't want to babysit. And I think the thing that I would tell Cole is that we've seen Texas fans in the last couple of years panic at this exact stage in recruiting. Where are all the commitments? What's happening? Is this gonna be a dud? And then you get to June and the momentum starts to kind of unfold. And we've seen it now multiple years in a row that Sarkisian gets the benefit of the doubt when it comes to, is everything going to be okay? Texas ranks in the rivals.com recruiting rankings right now 22nd in the country. Mm-hmm. So that's very mid.
Yeah.
But I don't think nobody would expect that Texas won't be a top 10 recruiting class, or maybe even a top 5 recruiting class, or maybe even something beyond that by the time pins get to paper in December. But Cole, like, I don't completely disagree with you in the sense that, you know, I want to feel the momentum a little bit. And I, as recent as today, was driving around thinking to myself, when are we going to start to see the byproduct of the success that Texas enjoyed on the field last season? I don't know that it's happened so far. Today may be one of those moments. And I think with French, you may be at a point where now we start to get an idea of the big time out of state targets that will represent the juice that this recruiting class will ultimately need if it's going to be a top 5, top 10, or better than that. The bar in recruiting for Texas is higher than 10. It's probably Texas fans want to see the top 5 kind of be the bottom, the floor of what Texas is doing in recruiting, especially when you consider we now live in an era where the 25-man scholarship number is just never an issue ever again. There's so much turnover that you would almost, if Texas wants to take 25, they can take 25 in any year that they want to, because even if you've got a senior class that's sitting around 15, and I think I would need to look at it. Hold on, let me just pull it up. The Longhorns are sitting at, well, why didn't that pop up? They got like 17 seniors, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I may be off on that. Hold on, no, they're at 15. I was right the first time. They're sitting at 15, but you would never be worried that they wouldn't be able to hit the level of attrition needed to get to 25. And if they're taking 25 or anywhere in that ballpark, you would expect them to have a nationally elite recruiting class. But I will admit that as someone that covers Texas football recruiting, I'm waiting to see, okay, these are the guys that are going to elevate it to that level. French kind of becomes the first from an out-of-state perspective that I look at and go, oh, okay, well, if they get that guy, now you can anticipate that's a step towards the type of recruiting class that's always the goal.
Yeah, and then it could start rolling. Our man Cody Carpentier jumps in the chat, says hopefully we'll see him in Jacksonville next month for the Rivals 5-star. Also, Cody giving us some perspective. Class of 24 had 2 commitments this time last year, Trey Owens and a kicker. Of course, Cody, at that point, Texas hadn't done what they did. And catch that is, you know, to your point, a Texas fan has been sitting back thinking, stop telling me about recruiting classes, show me football. We need football that will match up to all of that. And then the train just is out of control, rolling down the track, and nobody can stop it. We just haven't quite seen it in a way that you would have expected. Because
no, that's exactly right. But, and I would, you know, at this point last season, you didn't know. I mean, if we're talking about the out-of-state kids that Texas recruited last year, you wouldn't have known in early May that Texas was going to get Ryan Wingo. That was a recruitment that at this time last year, the assumption was Missouri or somewhere else. It wasn't automatically Texas. It just wasn't. You felt pretty good that Texas was going to get Jarrett Gibson. Like, that was a guy that we had future casted back in January or February of last year, half a year before he actually committed. But Brandon Baker was kind of a pipe dream. I can remember when that turned, it was in June. It wasn't this early. You know, I mean, you run down, you think about a guy like Aaron Butler that signed in December, like he wasn't on the Texas radar, but he was a national top 100 prospect. Wardell Mack is another example. He commits in November, but you wouldn't have necessarily anticipated back in May that it was definitely going to be Texas. So the out-of-state guys, it starts to happen with most of them in May and June. And today, it's ironic that if I hadn't written about the Texas OU deal in my 10 thoughts from the weekend, and if you missed it, go check out orangebloods.com. As a matter of fact, if you're interested in advertising on orangebloods.com, let's just put that bad boy up there right now, Chad, and remind everybody there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. Reach out to Cody Clearman or Sonny Nelson. You've got email addresses. You've got phone numbers. Reach out to them if you're interested in advertising either on Orange Bloods or Orange Bloods Live. But had I not done the column that I did, I thought about writing about this exact topic. Where's the momentum? Where are the names that you're and in a way, thank God I didn't. If the French thing happens today, it would have been like, oh, catch, perfect timing. You really have your finger on the pulse of the program. But, it's certainly something that is taking place in my head. Mm-hmm. And I think, this is, boy, you can see the makings of a really badass wide receiver class taking place.
Yeah.
They've got a litany of guys that are showing interest. I think DeCorian Moore is going to end up being a Longhorn. You can see that French is listing Texas #1. Khalil Lockett is a guy that's talked about wanting to play with both of these guys. They've got the quarterback in KJ Lacey, although you wonder if that sticks and will they potentially move on to the high school teammate of DeCorian Moore as the quarterback in this class. But, you can see the makings of maybe the nation's best wide receiver class coming together in Austin. It'll then become about the pieces around that. But, boy, wide receiver is just not a position that you'll ever have to worry about as it relates to the Longhorns. They 2 years ago were able to get 5-star Jonte Cook. Last year they get Ryan Wingo, depending on the service, a 5-star or borderline 5-star. Now you're talking about French and Moore and Lockett, and this doesn't even take into account the transfer portal where Sark is in 2 consecutive years gone out and landed arguably either the #1 or #2 type wide receiver available in the portal. So, the rich will continue to get richer as it relates to the wide receiver position. If you want to ask about offensive line, defensive tackle, linebacker, some of the other positions, tight end, those are the ones that I think justifiably we could have a conversation about, like, what are those going to look like? Wide receiver, you have that conversation, and it only sounds like, the elite of the elite being in that discussion.
Catch, I got a question for you about exactly how good you think French is. Before we do that, let's give Specs a little love. The Specs chat is up over 500 right now. If you had a big Cinco de Mayo party and you're just out of stuff, well, Specs can help.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
Once again, our man Cody Carpentier jumping in the chat. What's up, Cody? Bond, Bolden, Golden, Declare, French, DK, Lockett, Enter. Come on, could a dream get any? Wow. Oh, I don't know if that was a mistake in typing or if he meant to type that word. All right, Cody.
That's what I'm laughing about.
Cody getting real excited on it. Now that I look, those 2 letters are not near each other on the keyboard. So maybe
normally we get like swing. I can't remember the last time we got a moist comment.
I don't recall that either. Thank you, Cody, for that derailment. Wow. So my question.
It should be noted that the W key on the keyboard is not anywhere near the B.
Exactly. Yes. There you go. Yes. as I just said 20 seconds ago, they're not close to each other. So I think it's intentional. Yeah.
Sorry, I may have just been laughing and in my own dirty world.
Yes.
I was thinking the word moist. So fully intended. Fair enough.
There it is. There it is. Somebody says, was that a pun, Cody? No, and it was not. He meant to type that word. So there you have it.
Literal as literal gets.
That is awesome. Okay, so Jamie French, and by the way, for those that don't know, the Jamie is Jaime and 2 F's in French. We'll keep reminding you of that one, and really might need to remind you, obviously, if he picks Texas. So 2 F's in the word French. Catch, in talking to Jason Sukumel about him on this very show at times, Jason has expressed to the folks that he believes Decorian Moore might be in a category by himself. Would you agree with that? And then give me an idea of where French is in comparison for you. Does he deserve to be in a Decorian Moore conversation? Is he just below that? Like, how do you look at those two guys?
You know, Decorian Moore is so wildly athletic that he does, in a way, deserve to kind of be in his own tier, maybe like a 6-star, the rarefied air of 6-starness. Because I've mentioned, there are 5-star receivers that are being produced on an annual basis in the state of Texas. You can almost set your watch on that level of prospect existing. Yeah, I'd probably put more, because I've told you I would have more ranked ahead of Micah Hudson. I would have more ranked ahead of John Tate Cook, some of the other names that we've talked about as prospects. But French is very Micah Hudson-ish to me.
Okay.
When you watch his film, his receiving skill really leaps off the film.
Yes.
He's catching balls behind his body in acrobatic ways. He's working the sidelines. His catch radius is ridiculous. It feels like if you throw it to him at any angle and his arms can get to it, that he makes the catch. It's very Micah Hudson-ish, which I think is very Garrett Wilson-ish. So they are tremendous receivers before you get to like who are they and how elite are they as athletes. The thing that will jump out to you about Jamie French is like, my God, can that kid catch the football? I might even say it's very Khalil Lockett-ish, like that those two guys have a lot of similarities. If you can get one of those two guys, you've really landed a spectacular prospect. If you get both of those guys, like you're really cooking with grease at that point, let alone the idea of a guy like Decorian Moore who just adds a super booster level of speed and just raw athleticism that most elite athletes can't completely keep up with. So Micah Hudson-ish is the name that when I first watched French, I thought, man, if you changed the uniforms and told me that was Micah Hudson, I'd be like, yeah, no, it looks just like Micah Hudson. So I think the ability to jump off the film with receiving skill ability is the thing that really jumps out about me. It's not his speed. He's a really good athlete, but I don't think to myself, oh my God, that's what a 40-inch vertical looks like. Or, oh my God, 4.3 speed, no doubt about it. He's a plus athlete, but he's a plus receiving skill player.
I went through the video a little bit, some of the video today, Catch. I had not watched any Jamie French video, and you're absolutely right in terms of what stands out. He is helping quarterbacks out all over the place. And I don't know if it's the same guy every time, but boy, is he helping some guys out. Ball, like you said, ball thrown behind him, all that. Also, just visually, that dude is playing on some of the messiest football fields you'll see in a highlight package. because he's in Florida. So he's obviously they're all over the state of Florida, right? You're going to get a lot of rain, but he is in mud pits on a couple of these games. And I'm thinking, okay, if that's true, that probably means it might rain during games. It rained that day. It's a sloppy field, bad footing, but he makes it all look smooth, Catch, even though at times it appears like he's playing in a pig pen.
Yeah. And the thing you say about a lot of these kids in Florida, even from a kid who's playing in Jacksonville, right? So it's not like he's out in a swamp somewhere.
Right.
But you're not getting facilities. You're not getting coaching. You're not getting the level of sophistication that you'll see in the state of Texas, where you're like, oh, no, he's at a 5A program. They play in a stadium that's got 30,000 people. And there's a big scoreboard that, you don't have the whistles and bells that always accompany players from the state of Texas. And a lot of times, it goes into the conversation of, this isn't a conversation that I think completely applies to the players that we're talking about, like with French. We'll often talk about Texas players have a reputation for being kind of tapped out, that they enter college and the level of help that they receive already squeezes the most out of their ability before they ever enter college. French, to me, comes across as a guy that's best football is in front of him and probably hasn't played with the quarterback play, received the coaching, and played with a strength program and all of the whistles and bells that he'll eventually have at the major college program. He hasn't quite seen that yet. And we do. We talk. Duncanville's a perfect example, right? Like, you wouldn't call that like the most affluent, wealthy program that has all of the things that some of the, like an Allen High School might have.
Right.
But like it has a lot. They got the greatest coaches in the history of the state of Texas at the high school level, as its head coach. They're surrounded by talent that gets the most out of them. Even DeCorian Moore plays with a quarterback that's a high-level major college quarterback prospect. Not everybody's getting that. I don't think Jamie French quite has that. And you can see it on his film. It's like you mentioned it. He's elevating his quarterback.
Yes, no doubt. There's no doubt about it.
If you look at the stats at the end of the game and it's like, all right, Jamie French's quarterback went 15 of 18 for 250 yards. You can close your eyes and imagine, well, that might have been like 60% completion percentage instead of 80 had his wide receiver not been as utterly dynamic as French is. He's fun. If you haven't seen his huddle video, when this show's over, just go watch it. Just go watch it.
Yeah.
You'll get 60 seconds in and you'll have had a couple of holy shit moments along the way where you're like, oh, okay.
And also different usages too. Out wide, in the slot, left side of the formation, right side of the formation. They've got highlights of him all over the place. They even have a highlight of him, Catch, where they're just trying to show that he's trying to change direction. Yeah. It's actually a bad pass and he never catches the ball. They just want to show him turning his head back and forth like 5 times on one play.
No, he's an exciting guy. And look, if you're a quarterback, like that's the kind of guy that you want to play with.
Yeah.
And the guys in this wide receiver class are really interesting to me. I can remember an interview that DeCorian Moore did about a month ago.
Money B, we see your super chat. We'll get to it before we get out of here.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'll hold my thought. It's Money B. Let's go to Money B, and I'll come back to this story.
Okay, Money B, thank you so much for the 20, and we always appreciate your support. Hope you guys can get Margin Hooks on one of the shows. Would love to hear his breakdown on some of these guys. Catch, I have DK, French, and Lockett as the top 3 UT is recruiting. Who would be 4 and 5 on the list?
Well, if we're talking about players that, the wide receiver class in the state of Texas this year is pretty bonkers. There's a lot of guys that are all kind of pushed in together. I'll give you an example. I've got a guy like Michael Terry out of San Antonio, Alamo Heights, ranked really high in my state rankings. And the Longhorns aren't really even messing with him as a prospect. Andrew Marsh from Katy Jordan, to me, is a name that we've talked about a lot. He's visited Texas almost 10 times. Obviously, A&M's right there in the mix with him as well. He comes to mind at the wide receiver position. You'd probably have, Kelshawn Johnson out of Hitchcock is another guy that, to me, those two guys are probably 4 and 5. There are other receivers, and look, we could debate it. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are also really talented players. But I would probably, that would be my 4 or 5, I think.
All right, there you go. All right, Money B, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. All right, do you still have the thought in your head, or did I mess you up?
Yeah, no. So look, when you think about DeCorian Moore specifically, he was asked about the quarterback position, and he's committed to LSU. And if you haven't noticed, the LSU recruiting class in 2025, they have what is generally considered to be the number 1 quarterback in the country in Bryce Underwood committed to them. Texas has KJ Lacey committed to them. So they both are national level prospects, kind of household words in the realm of the 2025 recruiting class. And there was an interview that Moore did where he was asked about both Lacey and Underwood. And I could sense, if you're an LSU commitment, you got to say nice things about Underwood, right? I mean, yeah, he's phenomenal. But you also want to kind of praise KJ Lacey, who you would have spent time with on the visit when he was in Austin that weekend. And what Moore said was really interesting. He cares less about who the quarterback in his specific recruiting class is, and he cares more about who's going to be QB1 when he arrives on campus. What the hell does – and Texas is a perfect example of that. What the hell does he care about KJ Lacey if Arch Manning
is throwing in the ball,
potentially throwing in the football for not 1, but maybe not 2, maybe all 3 years? That feels a bit far-fetched, but I think Arch Manning's definitely going to stick around for 2 years. It's hard for me to imagine a world where Arch is only playing 1 year as a starter at Texas. That's not really the Manning way. So if you're any of these receivers, including Jamie French, this is where you wonder if the Manning effect, how big is it? How behind the scenes, how big is dude? Day one, as big as Quinn Ewers is, I don't know that he's got the cachet where guys are I remember when Chris Sims signed with Texas the very next year, Roy Williams, BJ Johnson, and Sloan Thomas, who I had 1, 2, and 3 in my state rankings that year, all committed to Texas. And they all said the same thing, we want to play with Chris Sims. That was a quarter century ago. Jesus Christ. And
don't ever think about the math, Ketch. Not that kind of math, anyway.
That hurts my head, hurts my heart.
That's rough.
But, these guys coming in, it really does matter. These guys want to play right away. So if that's what matters, it's not about KJ Lacey or even a Keelan Russell at that point, right? It's about who's the quarterback while I'm there day one. And next year, really for the first time, it will be Arch Manning. And you wonder how much that plays. He's such a household word, not just in the 2025 recruiting class, and across the scope in college football, right? He had his spring game. He's the only college football storyline on a weekend where a lot of big boys had their spring games. Arch Manning was the only headline on ESPN.com. He does move the needle in a world where slim margins and fine margins define ultimately how recruitments are decided. I just wonder about how big is Arch going to be in this class? I don't know that he greatly impacted last year's recruiting, but I wonder if he impacts it significantly this year. None of these guys, Jamie French isn't coming to Texas unless he has a very high confidence level of Arch Manning. And I don't think he even says Texas is my number one like school, as he did in this interview with Chad Simmons of On3, without feeling like that is money in the bank. That of all the things he's got to worry about, QB1 at Texas isn't one of them.
All right, before we get out of here, I liked one more chat here, Catch. I like this kind of scale. Darwin says, I saw DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in my head and thought, who is French? Darwin, a little closer to Lockett than Metcalf.
I'm telling you, the guy he's very Garrett Wilson-ish.
That's not a bad one. Yeah, not a bad one.
He's more silky than, he is anything else. When I watch Garrett Wilson, he does everything so well, but it's never his 40. It's never his vertical leaping. It's never all of these things that you can use to highlight a DK Metcalf. If I say DK Metcalf, you can close your eyes. And if I say the guy is like DK Metcalf,
oh yeah,
you've got like a type.
Right.
He is not, he's so smooth. I mean, he's just velvet. He's velvet in cleats.
If we didn't say it, 6'1", 185 is how I'm seeing him officially listed. But yeah, it's more. I would definitely say it's more Lockett than Metcalf, but it's not exactly like he's not exactly Tyler Lockett. I like your comp. I like your Garrett Wilson's better.
In a year by the end of this year, if Garrett Wilson gets Aaron Rodgers for a full season, that compliment will really stand out.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson's put up good numbers in the NFL, but he hasn't had good quarterback play yet.
No.
But had Aaron Rodgers not gotten hurt, and I think then I'm making this comment where I'm saying he's very Garrett Wilson-ish. I think there'd be a holy shit, Garrett Wilson. Wilson was a first-round draft pick. He was an All-American at Ohio State. It hasn't quite happened for him on the NFL stage yet, where he's gone nuclear.
He was offensive rookie. He was offensive rookie of the year, though. I mean,
yeah, but he hasn't gone nuclear.
Right. Even with the quarterback stuff he had around him, he still was that good already.
I'm just saying, I get the sense when I say Garrett Wilson, people were like, is there a sexier name you could compare him to? And it's like, I'm telling you, that's a compliment. It's a big one.
Oh, I know. After watching that film today, I could see why you would say it. He makes tough stuff look easy, makes the easy stuff look even easier, and he's impressive.
He's a quarterback's best friend. And if Texas is lucky enough to get him in this recruiting class, like I said, it'll be French going on the record and saying Texas is my number one really leads me to believe that Texas is in exactly the good kind of shape with DeCorian Moore that we're talking about, because I think those guys want to play together. And French is going to visit LSU. Moore's committed there. Like, he could have been much more neutral and said, on any given, I've got a top 3 or a top 2, and on any given day, I'm going back and forth between the two. That Texas is solidly his number one right now. He's not going to say it, but very quietly, I think there's an implication there that the players that he would otherwise play for were he to go elsewhere might very well also be leaning heavily to Texas. Boy, if you were going to say anything about this Texas recruiting class, it's that you want all of the other positions on the field to materialize the way I think the wide receiver class is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And for the record, Catch, before we get out of here, June 21st, that big day is the day he has the official scheduled, correct?
Absolutely correct. It's the big weekend of the year for Texas. The 14th will also be a big weekend. They can't get everybody in on the 21st, but the 21st is unofficially the biggest weekend of the year. It'll be a who's who of players that will be taking their visits that weekend. And that's how Sark likes to do it. He likes those guys to all come in together, and it's as if they're planting the seed that those guys can and could and will play together.
All right, before we get out of here, another reminder. If you're interested in a little advertising with orangebloods.com, there's a couple ways for you to do it. You can contact Cody or Sonny or both. Maybe reach out and ask for a conference call. They're willing to do that. Whether it's orangebloods.com, Orange Bloods Live, maybe you're interested in helping sponsor SEC Media Days, the very first SEC Media Days in the history of the Texas Longhorns. Are you kidding? We're trying to get up there to Dallas to the Omni, July 15th through 18th. If you want to help us do it, reach out to Sonny and or Cody. It is going to be awesome. Catch, for people who don't remember, for people who aren't as old as us, you and I were doing a radio show one year where someone showed up at SEC Media Days and served Phil Fulmer with legal papers at SEC Media Days. It is a circus wrapped in a shit show with a spotlight of just insanity on top. It is the weirdest thing ever, and Texas and Oklahoma get to be a part of it now. We have no idea what it's going to be like, but we're going to try to be there.
I'm with you.
Oh my God. Can't wait. All right. Thank you. Thank you for liking and subscribing and getting those notifications. Let me just double check. No additional super chats. Money B, thank you so much for that super chat during the show. We appreciate you. And Cody Carpentier, thank you for typing the word wetter during the show to describe how you feel about football. That was both disgusting and kind of awesome. All right. We will obviously be back on Wednesday at 4 with another recruiting hour. Also, special shout out to Jason Sukamel. He's in Vegas. Hopefully things work well for him. Hopefully it all goes well. He comes home with a lot of money. Also, remember to check out Orange Bloods Live all throughout the day, all throughout the shows. Check out the short videos. Check out all the content we've got for you. And, of course, check out orangebloods.com. All the latest articles, all the latest information. Thursday night's War Room. Catches 10 thoughts from the weekend every Sunday. All that good stuff is waiting on you. Orangebloods.com. Perfect time to jump in as this crazy, crazy season is coming up for Texas. All right, there it is. Until Wednesday at 4 o'clock for your next recruiting hour. Have a great rest of your Monday. This is the Recruiting Hour. He's Jeff Ketchum. I'm Chad Hastings, and this is Orange Bloods Live.